All right, welcome everyone to the first Latinas in Leadership 2015 Web Clinic. We are so excited to have you. If you don't know who I am by now, I will slowly fill up your inbox soon. My name is Erin Velarde, and I'm the founder and director of Vote, Run, Lead, and we are super excited to have you on. And we have an excellent clinic for you today. So we already have almost 35 participants. This is one of our highest RSVPs for this web clinic, which is awesome. So that says something about this conversation about women's leadership and ambition. So we have the chat box to the right, folks. We want you to tell us where you're from. Give a shout out to the partner organization that might have where you heard about Latinas in Leadership. And let's get started. We have a fantastic conversation. I want to make sure we have the full hour. I see lots of folks from Denver, where our presenter is from. So today's clinic is with Representative Crisanta Duran. She's the House Majority Leader for Colorado, and I'll do a proper introduction before we get started. Today's web clinic is recorded. All of Vote Run Lead's web clinics are recorded, and as part of being a free member of voterunlead.org, you get access to all clinics, both past and the ones that are coming up. For folks who don't know, out our web clinics, we launch whole series of about, I think, 25 more every Thursday at 2 o'clock, and you'll see us sprinkle in days at 2 Eastern time throughout the course of the year, so stay tuned for that. All right. If you don't know who Vote Lead is, we are a national women's leadership organization, training, technology, and community building to unleash the power of women leaders on our democracy. Well, we've got a bunch of folks from all over the country. This is great. My mic is also cutting out, so I'm going to talk a little slower. All right. We're just having a little, I think you might connect. Let me just check here. Great. Okay. So introduce Crisanta, who is a powerhouse in Colorado politics. Those of us from Denver who were on, you probably love her. 2008, might have been 2009. Last year, Representative Duran was named Colorado Legislator of the Year, which is pretty awesome. And she serves as the majority leader with a pretty significant leadership position. It's the head of the House, and she'll talk a little about what that is. She was chair of the Budget Committee, the committee for charting Colorado's budget, and we know that the budget is also saying that it's a little bit of a barrier for women who might have a lot of experience with numbers or running a big budget, especially state budget. She's also on the Legislative Council Committee, House Judiciary, Finance, State Veterans, and Military Affairs. So she's got quite a big role. So I'm going to fix Mike. I'm going to turn it over to Crisanta, who will walk us through vocalizing your answer with our program, Latinas in Leadership.
Well, good afternoon. It is great to be part of this webinar. I'm very excited. Hello to everybody from Denver and all over the country who is participating today. I'm so excited to be joining with you because when we think about the need for more women to run for office, more women to get involved with public service, regardless of whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, it is a goal that I think we can all get behind. And so I decided to run for office over 4 years ago, and it was one of the best experiences that I have ever had, one of the best jobs I've ever had is serving in this role. And so I was asked, why did I get involved with public service and the community? And I remember a time many years ago when I was pretty young, in high school. Imagine a very hot day in a small town called Watsonville, California. And on that day, there were thousands of people who went to this small town, college students, religious leaders, a variety of different people from different backgrounds from throughout the country that went to this small town to stand up to march on behalf of workers who were strawberry workers, farm workers that were working in fields, long hours, and many times unsafe working conditions, And that day, and I was very young at the time, it showed me the importance and the power of when people come together to be able to make change. And with 10,000 people walking on the streets of Watsonville, California, to bring about awareness of some of the issues that were affecting strawberry workers in that small town, there was a great awareness around the need for livable wages, affordable health care, economic security issues, making sure that women that were working in those fields were working in safe conditions. And it always sticks with me, that memory, because growing up, I was pretty shy. I was very quiet. I paid a lot of attention to my schoolwork, but I always will remember that because it really showed me the importance of organizing and people coming together to be able to make change to affect their community and then also affect those around them. And I think that's part of the reason that after I graduated from law school from the University of Colorado School of Law, I decided to go work for a labor organization that represented grocery workers, meatpacking workers, people who wanted to have access to livable wages, affordable health care, and a pension that they could count on. And when we think about the need to strengthen the middle class, whether you're in Colorado or in other states, this is such an important issue that we continue to cherish the values of the American dream and make sure that regardless of one's background, that everyone has an opportunity to succeed, an opportunity to be able to get a good paying job, an opportunity to be able to provide for themselves and for their families. And it's something now as a state representative that I still strive to work towards. When I decided to run for office, it was because I was frustrated. I thought there was more that we could be doing to advance many of the issues that face Coloradans and in House District 5 specifically around economic security and making sure that we preserve the American dream. So that is my story. It's been really wonderful to serve. For me, it's always been about trying to make the community better. And I think that that value started when I was pretty young. I didn't think I would actually run for office, let alone end up becoming a majority leader in the Colorado House of Representatives. But I think that hard work and dedication and realizing the voice that each of us has within, the voice that we can bring to the table as elected leaders or in other public service activities is something that we need more of. And it's very exciting to see politics change. We're seeing young people get involved with the process who are running for office and who are winning. We are seeing people with a variety of different backgrounds running for office and winning. And of course, we need to continue to see more women across the board running for office and winning. Because at the end of the day, the policies that we present and the issues that we work on, when we have people who provide their perspectives from a variety of different backgrounds, that is what leads us to the best policies for the state and for this country. So thank you so much for having me on, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Great. Can you hear me better?
Yes, I can hear you much better now.
Okay, good. Sorry about that. Okay, so let's dig in. Let's talk about ambition. And for many of us, we know that when we encourage women to run for office, we know that asking is really powerful. The Center for American Women in Politics, I think they're on the clinic, they have a ton of research about tapping women to run. Tell us about that time when, was this always something that was in your gut? Was always in the back of your mind? Or, were you asked to run? Tell us a little bit about the process of actually going from outside the political system into considering a candidacy.
Something that I was always involved with is a notion of social justice and being involved with the community in different ways. But I didn't think that community service would translate into running for office. And when I did run for office, ultimately, it was because I was frustrated. I thought that there were values and vision that were not represented in state government, and that's what I ran my campaign on. But I also think that many times there may be ideas from family, friends, people around you about what they want to see you do with your life. And even for myself, I don't think that people necessarily that were closest to me, and even family, really wanted me to run for office. They had a different idea for me. And I see it all the time where I'll meet young women looking to potentially run for office. And sometimes it may be people around them that may not think that they can do it. And so then they second question and second guess themselves as well. And so I think one of the most important things is think about why you want to run, what you can bring to the table, what you would like to get done for the community that you represent. Because at the end of the day, that is the most important element that needs to be elevated. And if someone like me can do it, then I know a lot of you can do it as well.
I think that's something that comes up a lot, Crisanta, is, my immediate circle sees a different path for me, or they don't want me to get involved in politics because it's dirty, or it's, and so tell us how you had those conversations. What were some of those one-on-one conversations with family and friends and people who, you would maybe think would want you to do this? What was their reaction to you when you said, no, I'm going to make this happen? Tell us about those conversations, how you navigated that.
Mm-hmm. To start off with, I think that politics can be challenging. And being in a role like this, of course, media watches what you do. You're scrutinized by the public eye. But what I have noticed is that it is a great opportunity, too. And there's a lot of good that comes out of politics. Sometimes a lot of good that people don't necessarily know because of the work that we do in a bipartisan way. A lot of the successes that happen don't necessarily get reported in the newspaper. And so there's a lot of good that can be done, and overall it has been a very positive experience for me. I think one of the things that you can do is, particularly if it's family, friends, if it's a spouse, significant other, is identifying clearly what you want to accomplish and why it is important. And it is important that when you run for office or get into a position of elected leadership, that you have a support system. And I think that support system can come in a variety of different ways. It could be people that are already in elected office. It could be friends and family to support you in different ways. And we can talk more about that. But I think one of the things that you have to identify early on is what you want to do and what you want to accomplish, and be able to communicate that effectively to those around you.
Right. Absolutely. Sort of putting it down on paper and setting those goals. What was it for you? Did you use a journal? Did you, tell a friend? Part of what we want to talk about here is it's sometimes scary to get it out of your mouth for the first time. One time we ran a contest for women, and the question we asked them was, what would you do if you ever wanted to change the world? If you knew you couldn't fail, what would you do? And we had something like 3,000 responses. It was great. And we couldn't take all 3,000 people. And when we, shared with folks that we couldn't, take all, 2,920 of them, many people wrote in, thank you for having us write this down. Thank you for making me write down how I wanted to change the world. What was that act for you? Was it talking to someone, of importance? Did you keep a journal? What was the actual, how did you get it out?
I think there are a lot of perceptions about what politics can be like and how difficult it may be to run for office and be in elected office. But like you said, when you start to think about it and you start to write down a plan and you're thinking about running for office and thinking about the amount of dollars that you may need to raise to be able to effectively communicate what your vision is for the role that you would like to be in, or you start to think about how many doors would I need to knock in a particular district to be able to get my message out, and how many volunteers would I have to recruit to help me get that message out. When you start getting into the specifics of coming up with a plan to eventually run for office, it is doable, and a lot of us do it, and that's one of the things that's so exciting right now is that there are so many women and young women that are running for different positions, and it's important to think through a plan, write the plan down, talk to the people around you to build support for the plan, but it's doable. And when you get into the details, you realize that you really can run for office and win.
And we have a question from Sarah from DC, is asking, who were your biggest supporters the first time around? Was it a group of individuals, or was it actual organizations or the party?
It was a mixture of both. I had a lot of individual supporters, and at the time, I was 29 years old, running for office, and there were a lot of peers, friends, people I had known throughout the years that I reached out to donate to my campaign and also to volunteer. But it was a mixture, and there was also other organizations that supported me as well in the labor community and other types of organizations as well. So it was a mixture of the two.
So that's right. You ran at 29. We have, I think we've all probably, if you're a young woman with big plans, you might have been told, oh, you're so ambitious, right? And even the use of, I don't know, I'd love to hear a little bit of an experience where you, kind of had to tackle a little bit of the ageism. You're a young Latina woman who is saying, hi, I'm 29 and I want to be in the legislature. Maybe a little more normal in Colorado because you guys have a lot of awesome women. Being the #1 state in the country right now with your female representation. But it's still a little bit of an anomaly. And so tell me a little bit about what that was like, sort of entering and running at 29.
Well, at the time, there were not many 29-year-olds running for the state legislature. So it's been exciting in the last couple of years since I've been serving to see more women running and young women running and winning those positions. But even just 4 years ago, there were not many people at that age and with the background that I had that were running for office. And I remember at different times my age has been raised. I had a colleague who was quoted in a newspaper saying that she was old enough to be my mom. So I think that there's always an element of age and gender that sometimes, will be a reflection of the way that people treat you. However, I have found that it is really an asset. It's been an asset in so many ways that when I was running for office, I think there was a lot of people in House District 5 that supported me because they wanted to see a new generation of leadership stepping into some of these roles. I think it's been an asset to bring forward a perspective of what affects millennials in Colorado and work on some of those issues. So in many ways, it can be an asset, and it's always important, I think, to just realize how crucial it is to have that voice at the table.
Yep. Great. We have another question from Kentucky, from Hillary in Kentucky, about, and I think this has a lot to do with the political climate this year and the past couple of years. When your family or friends, when you kind of declare your political ambition, you're putting your toe in the water, telling your friends and family you're thinking of running or you have these ambitions, and they think you're crazy. Why would you do that? Why would you get involved? And any words of advice for Hillary in Kentucky?
Absolutely. And I think it goes back to the opportunity to be able to lead and make positive change for the community that you represent. Sometimes politics can get a bad name just overall, and there is such a great opportunity to be had for individuals who are thinking about running and focusing on why it is important, not for yourself necessarily, but more so for the values that you want to bring into whatever role that you're interested in and what you'll be able to accomplish for the people that you will ultimately represent. Great.
One more question about the campaign component, and then I want to talk about how you became majority leader of the Colorado House. We have a question from Margaret, and she's asking, how important are endorsers you know, the formal endorsements, the informal endorsements, and did you have, I can't remember and I apologize, did you have a couple of opponents in your primary?
Yeah,
I thought so. Okay. And what does that mean to sort of differentiate you from a pool? And what are those endorsements and surrogates? How did you go about getting them, and how did they help or hurt your campaign?
Some of the previous work that I had done prior to running for office, I had some interaction with other elected officials and other public service organizations. And so through that experience prior to running for office, I went to many of the people that I worked for prior and asked for endorsements. I think endorsements can be helpful in that they're third-party validators of a particular candidate. And for somebody like me at the time, you know, being young, it was helpful to be able to show that I had different endorsers, different elected officials who thought that I would be a good legislator if elected. However, I don't think endorsements necessarily win races. They are helpful. So if you're somebody that is coming into politics and may not have a long history in politics and may not have as many connections, I don't think it's necessarily a detriment. I think it can be helpful, but I don't think endorsements necessarily win races. And so I spoke to a candidate not too long ago who was really concerned about that specifically. And I think at the end of the day, it's crucial to get your message out to voters and make sure that you're meeting and talking with as many voters as possible.
Right, that's right. And that's consistent advice we hear across the country, that the endorsements do matter. They're important, especially in sort of maybe your first election. They are third-party validators, but at the end of the day, you know, voters win elections. So let's talk a little bit about becoming the majority leader. I was trying to do a little Googling to see how many female House majority leaders there were and how many women of color, and I don't think there are many, and I definitely don't think there are many women of color leading state houses across the country. So you're awesome. We know that. What was, you know, that's sort of internal jockeying, right? That's a different kind of campaign. You're running a little bit of a campaign with your peers, and you often have to go to current party leadership to sort of state your ambition for wanting that position. So we'd love to tell us your story about sort of how you became majority leader in the Colorado House.
Yeah, absolutely. I was honored and humbled that my colleagues chose me to serve as majority leader of the Colorado State House. It was a competitive election, and it's different because you're basically asking the people that you work with every day during a legislative session to support you to be a leader of the caucus. Regarding how many women there are, it was quite the year because our speaker is the first woman Democratic speaker, Dickie Lee Hollingworth, and it was also the first time in the history of Colorado that both the speaker and the majority leader were women. It was also the first time in the history of Colorado that Latina became majority leader. So we were able to break some ceilings in Colorado. We know we have a lot more to break across the country and in Colorado still as well. So I was very humbled. I take the role very seriously. And to me, I think it is so crucial that hard work, I can't stress that enough. For me, I've always worked very hard to try and be successful in the sense of passing legislation for the people that that I represent, and also trying to be a very good majority leader for the people in our caucus that make up the Democratic House caucus. And so for me, I think one of the most important things to do is always be a team player, work well with others, and try and make sure that everyone has a place at the table and that there is value in the ideas and thoughts that they have regarding policy in the state.
And at the end of the day, why do what made you different? Why do you think, in a content perspective, what were you, when folks were saying, okay, why should I choose you? Why should I give you my vote for majority leader versus, person X? what was your answer, and how does that sort of tie into the actual role of majority leader, which is sort of to keep your team almost in line?
I think it's a couple of things, and in particular, values and vision of what the Democratic House Caucus could achieve was something that I think was very important to all of us. And it's not necessarily a partisan type of issue, but more so, what can we collectively do to be able to produce results to Coloradans across the state,
right.
From every corner of the state, regardless of whether somebody lives in a rural area or an urban area. How do we advance economic security for more Coloradans? How do we balance a budget that makes sense to be able to advance many of those economic security issues that Coloradans still struggle with? And so it was about values and vision, working well together, making sure that everybody has a voice at the table. And I'm very honored and thankful that the Democratic House Caucus chose me to serve as Majority Leader.
Cool. Great. All right, we've got a couple more questions in, and we've hit about the halfway mark, so I want to fully open it up to our folks from all across the country. To use the chat box to start the sort of full portion of the question and answer for Crisanta. We have a question I think you can answer pretty quickly around, do you need a legal background for becoming a legislator? Is it necessary? Has it helped? And I'd also like you to think of some of your colleagues who don't have a legal background, and what does that mix like at the House?
Yeah, it's a great question. I do have a legal background. It is not necessary. It has been helpful to me, though. When bringing forward different pieces of legislation and debating issues, the background has been helpful, but it has not been necessary. In the Colorado House, we actually don't have as many attorneys as there is in Congress, just percentage-wise. And I think actually being a legislator or being on city council or in whichever elected role that you may be interested in, a variety of backgrounds is always helpful. I mean, there are people that we serve with that are small business owners, educators. All of those different types of backgrounds are very helpful to when we're looking at policy issues, because we do handle policy issues regarding a variety of different topics and a variety of experiences is helpful. So it's not required.
Nice, great. So the next question we have, and I think I kind of want to, from Malaga in Cambridge, Mass. Hi, hey. We get this a lot when it comes to appointments. Appointment process may open. One, women are often maybe don't know about them. The people who are making the appointments don't look like us. And when we're asked, often the first reaction might be no. And so I just came back from St. Louis, where we're hosting our upcoming conference, and the city treasurer there, she was telling me about her story to run, and I swear to God, every time she was looking at a next position, she was like, the first thing I said was no. She was like, I had to be convinced, or actually I had to be asked again. And so when we're thinking about appointments, and we're thinking about these almost like internal recruitment structures that are coming either from within the party or within the legislature or the appointing body, how do we get, one, more men to think of women, and two, the sort of openness to taking on an appointment or taking on a board? Because we know that often is a stepping stone for running for office and kind of a test run, if you will, to see if you want to get involved in politics.
They're great questions, and anybody who's running for elected office or interested in it, an appointment is a great way to get some experience on different policy issues that may affect your community. So I think the first thing is don't be bashful about meeting with the decision makers who do the appointment about your interest and letting people know that you have an interest in whichever topic it may be. So I think that's the first thing. Don't be bashful. And if you don't get an appointment on your first try, keep on trying. There's nothing wrong with being told no, and it happens to all of us. And it's a good thing to know how to deal with, because inevitably there's always going to be certain barriers or obstacles that you will come across. But I think the second piece is really make sure you're persistent and continuing to let people know your interests and why you would be a good person to serve in a appointed position, and keep on getting your name out there for other opportunities that may cross your path.
Great. That's definitely a theme. I think, I've heard you say it now a few times, the persistence, right? The sharing with multiple people what it is that you want to do and refining that kind of ambition statement, if you will. This is who I am, this is what I want to do, this is why I think I would be good at it. Did you find that became easier for you as you, either on the campaign trail or trying to be majority leader, that just saying it over and over again helped?
Absolutely. You have to be persistent. You have to get out there, work hard, and I think all of that is relevant. But I think, just like any life experience, we all go through times where somebody may say no, whether it's an appointment or whether it's for support for a campaign or whether you're applying for a job. I think there's always a sense of there's different barriers and obstacles that will come in front of you. And regardless of how good you are, how smart you are, how thoughtful you are, regardless of all of those things, there's always going to be a time where there will be some sort of obstacle that will be put in front of you. And for me, I think it's just been crucial to get back up again and keep on going and keep on working towards whatever goal, whether it was legislation or running for office or being in a particular role, is to keep on going regardless of what happens, because you never know, there may be an obstacle in front of you one day, and it may just be the obstacle that you need to make you stronger and prepare you for the future to be able to do what you need to on behalf of the community.
That's awesome, and I feel very, very similar. I can think of a couple of experiences like that. So building off of that, we've got great questions around mentorship, right? We know that having a mentor helps to fuel your ambition. Having a sponsor, someone who's going to spend their political capital on you, helps to fuel your ambition, actually helps you see results. What have you seen as a successful mentor-mentee relationship? Are you in one? What does that look like? And how can people better leverage their mentors? Like make really direct asks and get them to really help them move along their path.
Sure, it's a great question, and I do try and mentor as many young women as I possibly can. So we have a lot of different people who come through the office, and there's one young woman in particular that I'm mentoring right now. And I think that sometimes we think that we have to have just one mentor or just one person to go to for advice. And for me, at least being in this role, it's been a team of people that you may have helping you through different situations, depending on what it is, helping with advice at crucial times. And I think, there's also been a sense of, because there hasn't been that many women in elected office and some of the leadership roles, or there has not been as many women of color in particular in some of these roles, there's not as many mentors per se that I can necessarily go to give me advice that have in a role like this, right? So for me, I think has been helpful to have a variety of people with different backgrounds to be able to go to and get advice and thoughts about issues that I deal with. And in this role, I've taken it very seriously that although I'm the first Latina to serve as majority leader in the State House, I definitely do not want to be the last. And we need to have more women, more efforts to attract and recruit Latinas to public service and women generally. And so I try and do as much mentorship as I possibly can to help others succeed and help others get into different roles of public service.
Well, great. Great. The questions are rolling in. I want to make sure we get to this other one. Make sure I'm being a good moderator. Okay. One, so since there are kind of few, young Latina role models in leadership positions, what are your words of advice on a couple of topics? One, of course, is work-life balance, right? That same old phrase, I wish we could come up with something better. I like to just call it life, but, how do you make that happen? What are the choices that you make? And what are some of the sacrifices that you make? And another question we have is, how do you craft your public messages and sort of choose your key issues? I know they come from the core. You have some core issues, but how do you reconcile that with what your constituents want? Mm-hmm. So it's a two-part question.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Two great questions. Work balance is always can be challenging, right? I mean, I definitely work a lot, but I love my job. I love what I'm able to do for the people that I represent, and I love being able to try and make Coloradans' life just a little bit better and increase economic security for all. So that's something that that motivation to work hard is something that I have enjoyed, quite frankly, and I'm lucky to be in a job that I love to do so much. But I think that it is good to remind yourself of how important it is to have that balance, carve time out to spend with friends, with family, carve time out to be able to do the things that you really love. For years prior to being in the legislature, from third grade through law school, I studied Mexican folklorico and Spanish flamenco dance and danced for years. And so I try and, go to a local Zumba class now and again, or go salsa dancing and get that time in for myself. So I think make it a priority because there's so many times in these jobs that it is easy to say, oh, I'll do that next week or, 2 weeks from now or whenever, and then it never happens. So make it a priority to have that balance. And then regarding the issues that I have brought forward, I've brought forward issues concerning renewable energy, electric cars, affordable child care, workforce development, food deserts. All of those issues have been a reflection of topics that constituents have come to me with. And actually, almost all of my legislation has been driven by constituents, people in the state coming to me and saying, look, this is an issue, here's a solution. And I take that very seriously when people give me feedback about what we're doing at the Colorado legislature and what we should be focused on.
I love it. I love it. We talked about this a little bit before we got on the full session about this kind of new definition of ambition and in fact, a new definition of success. I was sharing a little bit about the Huffington Post talking about the third metric, the idea that the more women we see in these leadership positions and these top positions, we're redefining success. We're making sure that it's, yes, the title and the position and the salary, but those things are becoming less important as impact, connection to community, connection to work, loving your job, like you just said, is more motivating for us. It sort of hits us at the core a little bit more around the word ambition and the sort of idea of being successful. Would you say you agree with that, or do we need a little more balance too, where the stature matters, because you do need to be in positions of power as well, the really formal ones?
Yeah, I think a couple things with regards to that topic. In particular, one of the issues that I've seen just being in elected office is more women running for office that do have kids, do have a family, and I think that we need to get to a point and continue to work on making sure that women can run for office and have that family work balance because I think it makes our political system better, quite frankly. This past year we made some pretty significant investments in trying to make child care more affordable for more Colorado families. Just seeing some of the stories and hearing some of the stories from people in House District 5 of young women, professionals, variety of different backgrounds, trying to be able to work and also have a family can be a real struggle. And our political system can only be better by making sure that we have a voice of mothers and a voice of families at the table concerning our policy issues that we work on. So I think it is. I think it really comes down to what people want to. I've had good friends of mine who love and absolutely cherish the opportunity to be a stay-at-home mom. And there is incredible value in doing that. But I think it's a question for each of us individually and trying to figure out the best place that you can have in terms of what is your role and what do you want your role to be now. And that role can change over time. So I think that we need to continue to work on making sure that that balance is achievable.
And how do we, the chat is sort of blowing up around men, right? How do we get men to see, one, we never asked this question of men on work-life balance, though I'm going to do that now. Thank you, Marissa from the United States somewhere, who asked that question. That's the truth, right? We don't often ask men, how do they do it? And it's a big fear for moms who want to spend those quality early years with their children, and ultimately the idea of, tying in women being paid less for the same work. It all is a big part of how we don't have the same kind of flexibility that men have in navigating between being a parent and being a professional. What are you seeing? Anything good that you're seeing around engaging men on this topic? Are you seeing a trend with the younger women that are in an office, what their husbands are doing, or significant others of any kind?
I think one of the things that we have to continue to do, and we see this when it comes to economic issues, a variety of different topics where there's disparities between men and women. And sometimes we talk about some of these issues as though they affect women only. And we have to remember that when we talk about equal pay for equal work, that's not just a women's issue. That's good for men as well. When we talk about affordable child care, that's not just a women's issue. That's good for men as well. And being inclusive of so many of these type of disparities, that it's not just about the advancement of women, which that is very important. Right. It's also about what is good for society as a whole, what is good for the public as a whole, and being mindful of that as we look at different topics that affect us.
And you seem pretty fearless, I will say that. But I think the fear, is the thing that can sometimes hold us back. A little voice in our head, or even just one person in the outside space kind of validating that little voice in the head. How do what are your tricks for sort of overcoming the fear, whether it's like fear of public speaking, which a lot of us have, I have it. What do you have any tricks that you use? Do you have any tips for folks that's kind of coming over, not just the small jitters, but some of the big, that little voice in your head that says, no, this isn't for you?
Well, I'm honored that you think I'm fearless. I don't know if I've ever thought of myself that way. And I think that the first is people need to recognize that, it's natural to question ourselves. And women do this a lot. We just do. I think that it's natural to think, was I too assertive? Did I push too hard? Did I not push enough? Was I nice enough? Was I not nice enough? I think that naturally those questions come up in our minds, and we self-evaluate a lot. But one of the most important things that I think people can do when they're thinking about giving a speech, running for office, making a serious decision to get into a position of leadership, the first thing you always have to do is be able to believe in yourself. So many times people do not try and go for that next step or get into a position or get that appointment that you may have mentioned earlier because they second-guess themselves and they don't believe in themselves. And so, you know, feeling good about who you are, the values that you represent, and that you can lead, I think is always step number one. And if there's times where you question that, or you may think, well, maybe, you know, I need to do X, Y, and Z, I think that's natural, but don't allow that to be your own internal barrier from allowing yourself to be able to succeed. And when I look at a lot of different positions, you know, I've always thought to myself, if they can do it, I can do it. And there has to, where there's a will, there's a way. And focusing on why you're there in the first place has always been something that's been helpful to me. One of the most important things that I've done and try to do as much as possible is talk to the people that I represent and spend time with people who are struggling, who are living paycheck to paycheck, who really want to get the good paying job but don't necessarily know the pathway to be able to get there. Those are the greatest motivators for me to keep on going, because it's never been about me. It's been about all of the people that are counting on us to do good things for the state of Colorado.
Awesome. Thank you. We have a great question from Rachel. As a Latina leader, how do you deal with the media sort of constantly saying, pitting women against each other, or particularly for Latinas, labeling our passion as argumentative or combative or maybe a little crazy, okay? How do you deal with some of those stereotypes, essentially?
I think that it is crucial to understand that some of those stereotypes or the box that some may want to put you in will always be there. And so for me, it's been more of an effort to not allow people to put me in the box that they would like to. And even if they do, keep on going, because at the end of the day, we're trying to advance policies for the people of the state, and that is the most important thing. And I think it's been interesting. I mean, when Hillary Clinton was asked recently whether she was interested in running for president because she became a grandmother, I think that those types of questions will always be out there. And understanding that you know, the media's role can be different from, and not can be, but almost always is different from the role that you may want to achieve as an elected official. And just understanding how those roles are different and continuing to focus on getting good work done for the people that you represent has been important to me.
Great. I think it's probably our final question around how do we make sure that women of color are ready to run, especially around term limits or when appointments are coming. You know, we saw Romney get in trouble for the binders full of women, but that was a real thing that actually helped elected officials in Massachusetts find more women, essentially qualified women. And there's appointment projects in places like the Sue Shear Institute out of Missouri, and there's some stuff happening in San Francisco. How do we make sure that we get talented, qualified, wonderful women of color ready for those positions that are term limited, and cultivate those relationships in a way where we have a steady pipeline of women ready to run?
Well, the first thing is get involved with organizations like Vote, Run, Lead, and Latinas Represent, and different networks like that are interested in seeing you succeed and will open up doors in terms of the training that you need, but also open up doors in terms of just network. In Colorado, and I know in other states too, there's also a group called Emerge. You know, there's lots of good organizations out there that I would encourage people to get involved with. But I think the other thing too is, you know, if you're going to run for office, you need a network of support, people who will volunteer, people who will donate to your campaign. So work heavily on building that network of support before running for office. I think that is important. It can be helpful for you down the road as well. And I think last but not least is go out to those organizations that, may have similar values like as you do, whether it's labor or business organizations, whether it's environmental organizations, choice organizations, health organizations. I mean, there are just so many different public policy groups that work on a variety of issues, and build relationships with them. Get to know the types of things that they're advocating for early on. That can help with that network as well.
Fantastic. This is great. So I'm going to just a little wrap up of sort of what we heard around you vocalizing your own ambition, and being not as fearless as you may seem, though you seem pretty fearless. Persistence is something, a theme I've heard throughout your story. Persistence, sort of when one door closes, another door, will open, and not letting folks sort of put you in that box, whether it is, sort of the, overly passionate Latina or the young woman, right? Using those things to your advantage. That's awesome. We heard that quite a bit. But the resilience piece, there's something very resilient about your story and about your personality. And the laughter and the kind of lightheartedness of your personality is probably very refreshing at the Capitol. But I think probably where a lot of your ambition and force seems to come from, what I heard over the last hour, is that you're doing it for the people. You have this sort of greater purpose, and you have your eye on the prize. And so that prize of, the legislation that you've passed in the few years, and your accomplishments and your colleagues voting you to majority leader is a testament to your personal leadership and your passion. And so I thank you for being our first speaker in the Latinas in Leadership series. And many of the things you said about building networks, we're going to be talking about that in the next couple of weeks. So I encourage folks to check out that schedule. I think it's literally called like creating a mentor and building power networks or something like that. So, I think that is really true, that it's, it's about people and relationships and getting yourself out there and getting known and, saying it a few times. And the more you say it, the more comfortable you'll be with your personal ambitions and letting folks know that you're ready. And, kind of quieting some of those voices, finding things, whether it's going to a Zumba class or whatever it may be, to fill your cup when times do get tough. So thank you so very much, Representative Duran, Majority Leader.
Thank you so much, and thank you for everybody who joined today. And if you ever need anything from my office, please do let us know. My website is www.duranforcolorado.com, and we'd love to stay in touch with you. If you're thinking about running for office or are an elected leader, if there's anything I can do to help support you, please do let me know.
Awesome. All right. So, folks, I just want to share a couple of things with you before we close out. National Go Lead is happening. It's our next National Vote Run Lead training. It is May 8th and 9th, and for some reason I can't pull the slides up, but that's okay. May 8th and 9th in St. Louis, Missouri. We all know what's been happening in St. Louis and Ferguson, and we are excited to be a part of women leaders who are transforming these communities, and we really believe that women leaders are the ones to be transforming communities all across the country. Folks like Crisanta, of course, folks like all of you. What will happen at the end of this is you will get an evaluation from this session. So let me close out the webinar. And what that will do is allow us to give you, this little window will pop up and we'll ask you what else you would like to see. Rate this session, rate my moderating skills, rate Crisanta, tell us what you want to see more of, and we will make it happen. And I hope you tune in next Thursday. And I'm so excited to see all the folks. I don't know if you're able to follow along the chat, but there are a bunch of women who are running or thinking about running in the chat box, and that's pretty amazing. So we will make sure to follow up with you. And those ladies better get your butts to the National Go Lead in St. Louis in May. All right. Have a wonderful Thursday, everyone. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next week for Bureau Live Web Clinics.
Take care.
Talk soon.